If you grew up hearing how mature you were for your age, or how you were an old soul who never caused any trouble, those weren't necessarily compliments. In psychology, extreme childhood independence is often a warning sign. In healthy families, parents sit at the top as a protective buffer. When adults struggle, a traumatic inversion forces the child to the top. This triggers instrumental parentification, assuming adult logistics, and emotional parentification, acting as the family's surrogate therapist. By becoming an expert at anticipating the emotional weather of the room, the child learns to scan for danger and prevent conflict. But managing everyone else leaves absolutely no space for the child's own needs, sadness, or anger. They silence themselves to keep the peace. This charts the physiological toll of chronic role reversal. A developing nervous system cannot focus on autonomy when desperately trying to stabilize its environment. The biological growth pathway flatlines, and the brain permanently shifts into a catabolic survival state. A developing brain translates this environment into a strict, terrifying rule. Your safety and your access to love are entirely conditional upon how useful you are to the people around you. The hyper-responsible good child persona functions as an invisible architecture of trauma, built specifically to keep an unstable environment from collapsing. That deep childhood survival programming doesn't magically expire on your 18th birthday. It simply changes its environments. Clinicians often see this manifest as Eldest Daughter Syndrome. The childhood habits of caretaking, overachieving, and self-silencing follow adults straight into their careers and friendships. You become the reliable one who fixes every crisis at work and remembers every detail of your friends' lives. Inside, you experience this as a crushing, chronic hyper-responsibility. You feel an agonizing inability to rest, play, or simply exist without a constant, buzzing sense of guilt telling you there is something you should be doing. This flowchart tracks the relational cost. Parentified adults subconsciously seek out partners who require significant fixing. Caretaking feels like the safest, most familiar way to secure a connection, which locks both people into a repeating cycle of dependency. By treating utility as the only currency for love, you build a life where you expertly solve everyone else's problems while slowly starving your own emotional needs. Recognizing these patterns as an adult often triggers an immense wave of guilt. That's because, in most cases, the parentification wasn't born out of malice. External systemic pressures like severe poverty, chronic illness, or addiction severely shrink the emotional and practical capacity of the adults in the home. When parents are drowning, children instinctively step into the gaps to keep the family afloat. In many immigrant households and diaspora communities, this dynamic is a daily requirement. A child might be the only one fluent in the local language, forcing them to act as the primary translator, legal mediator, and cultural navigator for the entire family's survival. Understanding this kind of systemic strain reframes a child's hyper-self-sufficiency as an intelligent, required response to an overwhelmed environment. Adult burnout represents the inevitable compound interest of carrying a family's systemic strain for decades. Healing from this requires both and grief. You fiercely love your parents, while simultaneously mourning the carefree childhood you were denied. You understand the immense struggles they faced, but both are true. Psychologists address this deep survival programming through an evidence-based approach known as inner child work. Inner child work builds a conscious relationship between the highly competent adult and the unhealed, vigilant parts of the psyche. You practice this by pausing when your reaction doesn't match the room. When the prospect of taking a day off triggers severe panic, you recognize that it isn't your adult brain reacting. It is the overwhelmed 8-year-old inside you who believes resting is dangerous. In that exact moment, you have to step in. You offer yourself the boundaries, provide the reassurance, and absolute permission to rest that no one was able to give you when you were small. You actively decouple your identity from your output. You replace the terrifying rule of "I must be useful to earn love" with the quiet, persistent truth that you are worthy of rest simply because you exist. Think of the one specific thing your younger self needed most: protection, a break, or just someone to listen. You are finally old enough and resourced enough to give it to them today.